Chapter 11. The Library at Night. St. Oswald's at night was a different school. Corridors that by day echoed with footsteps and laughter now only hummed softly with the workings of the old heating and pipes. Emergency lights glowed a sickly green, turning everything into a scene from a bad ghost film.
Rose walked barefoot in her socks, shoes in one hand. The floor was cold, polished so smooth her toes almost slid. In the pocket of her hoodie she felt the weight of the archive key, the same one that had briefly gone missing in Professor Llewellyn's folder before it had accidentally found its way into her bag.
She kept telling herself this wasn't breaking and entering. She had an archive assignment. She worked there officially. She was just slightly off rota. Even in her own head, the lie sounded thin. The entrance to the library basement looked even less inviting at night. Wooden door, metal handle, a small pane of frosted glass that showed nothing but darkness. She paused, listening. Silence. Only the faint hush of rain somewhere above. She slid the key into the lock. The mechanism bit with a drawn-out, too loud click. She flinched. "Too late for subtlety," she muttered. The stairs down felt longer than usual. She counted them automatically. 23. At the 15th, the air grew noticeably cooler. At the 20th, the familiar smell of dust, paper, and damp stone rose to meet her. The archive greeted her in half-light. Only one lamp above the main table was on, the one by the entrance they sometimes left during evening consultations. Now it carved a single circle of light in a room full of shadows. The 1976 box was where she and Victor had left it, but shifted by a few centimeters. Rose saw it at once. Someone else had been here since she'd cut the wax. She shut the door behind her without turning the key. Instinct said an escape route was better than an illusion of privacy. She went to the box and opened it carefully. Inside, beneath the Polaroids and letters, lay the journal, the one she had only read in fragments so far, afraid to disturb it. Her fingers trembled as she leafed through to find her place. If you're reading this, it means someone ignored the warnings. The handwriting was dense, small, nervous. Rose knew the later pages had to hold specifics, dates, names, descriptions of what she was still afraid to name aloud. She wanted to take the journal back to her room, make copies, protect it. The archive no longer felt safe now that someone had gone through her locker. She slid the notebook carefully into her canvas bag. Her pulse was too fast. Then she heard footsteps. They bounced off the stone in a way that made it hard to tell where they came from. Someone was coming down the stairs. Someone who wasn't worried about being heard. On instinct, she flipped off the lamp. The bulb snapped dark with a soft click, plunging the archive into thicker shadow. Only narrow slices of light from the corridor seeped under the door. She froze by a shelf, listening. The hinges creaked, a sound she knew too well from library duty. "You do realize they don't give extra credit for night shifts in the archive," a voice said from the dark, "unless you're planning to add your own chapter to the school's history." The first wash of relief was immediately chased by anger. "Matt," she sighed, not yet stepping out. "Who else would be breaking into the archive at this hour?" A match hissed. Matt lit one of the small oil lamps, the one closest to the door. His face surfaced out of the gloom, hair damp from the rain, shirt collar open, tie as carelessly loosened as always. "Technically, I have a pass," he said, waving a slim card with the school crest. "Founder's son, all that. The rules assume I know what I'm doing." The rules assume a lot, Rose said, finally moving into the light. Like that the archive exists to store truth, not bury it. His gaze went straight to the bag she had clamped against her side, a little too fast.
"I see someone here has a different definition of storage," he said. "Did you really think no one would notice the journal suddenly changing address?"
The air between the shelves thickened.
"Breaking into my locker wasn't enough," she snapped. "Yesterday 1 page would do, and tonight you've come for the whole lot?"
He stepped closer, though the table still separated them.
"I came to see if you were going to leave anything I didn't have to pry out of your hands," he said, more calmly than his eyes suggested. "And maybe to make sure you don't suffocate under a pile of evidence and your own conscience."
She let out a short, humorless laugh.
"Touching," she said. "A Whitby heir on night duty for other people's souls. Don't insult me by claiming this is for my sake."
"Maybe it isn't," he shot back. "But the fact remains, if you march this to the wrong people, the first consequences don't land on Arthur or my father. They land on the girl with the alcohol report and ambitions above her station."
"You have the nerve to talk about the wrong people," she said. "Your family is the worst of them, Matt. They're the ones who threatened the boy who wrote that journal. The ones who cut out the names. The ones who turned someone's death into a footnote. And you—"
She hesitated only a fraction.
"You're the one protecting people with blood on their hands."
Blood on their hands, cracked through the half-dark like a whip. Matt stiffened.
"Careful, Hartley," he said softly. "At this school, calling someone a murderer without proof can end things faster than you can write it in your notebook."
"I do have proof," she said. "In the letters, in the journal, in what Victor told me, in how suddenly everyone cares what I keep in my locker. If it were just old paper, no one would have bothered." He leaned across the table, hands braced. The lamplight threw shadows under his eyes.
"You think I don't know what they're capable of," he hissed. "You think I made them that way? I was born into this, Rose, the same way this school was built on their money. My entire life has been a tightrope between being their heir and being myself. Call them murderers to the wrong ears, and even the archive won't save you."
"Maybe it doesn't have to save me," she said, "as long as it doesn't save their legend."
His laugh was sharp, like a slap. "Idealism is adorable up to the point where someone dies for it," he said. "That journal," he jerked his chin at her bag, "isn't just the story of poor Julian who stood up to tradition. It's an instruction manual for how far they'll go when someone gets in their way." "Which is exactly why it can't stay locked in here forever," she protested. "Exactly why someone outside these walls needs to read it."
"Who?" he demanded. "The head? The board? The Cavendish Committee?" "Who?" he demanded. "The head? The board? The Cavendish Committee? Their names are on every donor's list. They all have reasons to pretend nothing happened. You'll walk in with a journal. They'll see a problem to be neutralized before it hits the papers."
They stared at each other over the table. He looked like someone holding a map of a minefield. She felt like someone standing on a mine, being told not to move.
"So what do you suggest?" she asked, voice pitched a little too high. "That I hand you the journal? Trust that the son of the man who threatened Julian knows best how to handle his memory?"
"I suggest," he said slowly, "that for once in your life you consider the possibility that the only way to fix things isn't to shout about them as loudly as possible. Sometimes what you save depends on what you hide. The words jabbed straight into a nerve.
I am not going to be complicit, she said through her teeth. I won't be one more person pretending they saw nothing. If you can live with that, congratulations. I don't want to be part of your dynasty of brass and blood.
His face hardened.
You don't have a monopoly on disgust, he snapped. You're not the only one who has to see that name every morning coming down the stairs. He straightened. But you are the only one who thought it was a good idea to march into their territory with a lit torch, a gallon of petrol in your bag, and call it justice.
It's not a torch, she shot back. It's light. Light is there to show what other people hid.
She grabbed for the bag. He moved faster than she'd expected. His hand came down on the journal with practiced precision, as if he'd been training all his life to snatch papers from other people. They both pulled.
"Let go," she growled.
"Not until you stop treating this like a weapon you know how to use," he said between his teeth. They tugged again. The notebook snapped open, pages fluttering. One sheet, the one with the entry about a specific night, a date and place they both knew were crucial, gave a warning creak.
Then, without thinking, Matt did the one thing he hadn't intended. Instead of letting go, he pinched that page between two fingers and pulled. The paper tore with a short, dry sound that in the archive's silence might as well have been a gunshot. Rose froze.
"What are you doing?" she shouted.
He looked almost as shocked as she felt. Then, slowly, he folded the torn sheet in half, then again, until it became a small, dense rectangle.
Preventing a catastrophe, he said, though panic threaded his voice. If anyone finds that page, they won't ask for context. They'll see the names, the place, the date. Nothing else will matter.
He slipped the folded fragment into his jacket pocket. The movement was decisive, but his hands were shaking. Rose stared at him.
"You've just destroyed evidence," she said quietly. "Done exactly what they did. Cut out the piece of history that didn't suit you."
"I didn't destroy it," he said. "I took it. There's a difference. The evidence still exists, just not in your bag, and not in their box."
"In your private closet of ghosts," she spat. "Am I supposed to believe you'll graciously bring it out into the light one day when you decide it's safe? When everyone it could hurt is already dead?"
His silence answered for him. "Congratulations, Whitby," she said at last. "Your uncle would be proud."
The hit landed. For a heartbeat, his mask slipped. Pain flashed in his eyes.
"I'm glad you find it so easy to classify me," he said, ice back in his voice. "It must be comfortable. The world divided into murderers, cowards, and Rose Hartley, sole guardian of justice."
The world's divided into people who do something and people who hold their coats, she replied. Today, you chose the coat.
She snapped the rest of the journal shut and shoved it into her bag before he could stop her. Then she turned towards the door.
"Where are you going?" he asked.
"To find someone," she said, "who's less scared of ghosts than they are of the living." Her hand on the handle trembled only slightly.
"Rose," he said behind her, unexpectedly calm. "If you run out of here with half the truth, they'll turn the other half into a weapon, and they'll use the bit you have against you."
She didn't look round. "Then it's a good thing someone other than you will know exactly what you've hidden in your pocket," she said. "Ghosts, as I recall, don't like witnesses." She had only taken a few steps.
Matt still stood with his hand in his jacket. Rose could still feel on her wrist where his grip had dug into her skin.
Then light sliced across the floor outside. Not the steady, cold glow of the ceiling fixtures, but a sharp, moving beam, a torch sweeping the gap under the door like a blade. Behind it came heavier footsteps, a different rhythm, thicker soles, the gait of someone with the right to be anywhere. The night watchman. Matt moved before she thought. In a single stride, he was beside her, his other hand snapping the lamp off. Darkness dropped over them almost without warning.
"Don't move," he whispered, "and don't breathe like someone with something to hide."
He seized her wrist and tugged her between two shelves. The gap was narrow enough that she normally would have had to turn sideways. Now they had to press in almost together. Her back hit the chilled metal. In front of her she felt his body, jacket still damp.
The beam of the torch cut into the room with the scrape of the door.
"Who's in here?" the watchman called. The voice was low, raspy, a familiar threat in a new wrapping.
The light slid over the table, chairs, the 1976 box, which now looked like any other cardboard crate. It missed her bag by only a few centimeters.
Matt instinctively pulled her closer. Her back was against his chest now. She felt his breath stutter, then settle into a forced, even rhythm. Her own heart pounded so loud she was sure they'd hear it upstairs in the library.
The torch washed over the shelves. One step, then another. The watchman came close enough that they could hear the rustle of his jacket. Above their heads, metal squealed as he leaned on a rack.
Matt's fingers tightened around her wrist, their hands accidentally laced together. For one absurd moment, she had the sense that this was the only living connection in a room full of dead paper.
"Probably Llewellyn left it open again," the watchman muttered. "Or one of the little library geniuses can't read a timetable."
The beam swung once more over the area by the door. It paused right on the edge of their shelf. Rose held her breath. After a few seconds that stretched like entire chapters, the light moved away. Another door squeak, the clunk of the lock, retreating steps.
Silence closed in. Neither of them moved. They could hear only their hearts, two different rhythms beating so close together they sounded like one.
Matt stepped back first, slowly, as if any sudden motion might trigger an alarm. He let go of her wrist. Her skin was faintly indented where his hand had been.
"See," he whispered, "ghosts are one thing. The living are far more consistent." She didn't answer. Her throat felt tight.
They eased out of the gap like people surfacing through ice.
Rose grabbed her bag and hugged it to her, feeling the weight of the journal inside, lighter by one page, heavier with what had just happened.
"Wait," Matt said as she reached for the handle. "Let me go first."
"So you can get ahead and spin your version?" she said.
If someone's taking the blame for breaking into the archive, it might as well be a Whitby, he replied, sounding tired. The school has more reason to keep me than to throw out their latest scholarship poster girl.
Before she could argue, he turned the key and opened the door. He went up first, as promised.
Straight into the torchlight.
The watchman was waiting at the top.
"Knew it," he said calmly. "So sooner or later I'd find one of the promising young people down here."
His gaze slid from Matt to Rose, who emerged from the dark a second later. In that split second, they had exactly the same amount of time to decide which version of the night St. Oswald's was going to write down.